It was a quiet night, cold and dark. John sat inside his small metal shelter on the edge of the human colony. He was drinking a hot cup of synth coffee, trying to warm up. The desert winds outside howled like old ghosts. Life on this lonely planet was never easy, but tonight, something felt different. Suddenly, he heard it, a sound. Soft and strange, like a baby crying. John put down his cup and stood up slowly. He moved toward the door and paused. No one should be out there, not in this freezing wind, and definitely not a baby. He pressed the button and the heavy steel door creaked open. A gust of cold air blew in, stinging his face. There, just outside the door, was a small basket. Inside the basket was a baby, but not a human baby. Its skin was a soft silver blue. Its tiny hands had 3 fingers. Its eyes were big and glowing, almost like stars. Wrapped around the baby was a thin, torn cloth. Pinned to the cloth was a dirty piece of paper with shaky writing. John picked it up and read, "Please save her. She has no one." That was all. He looked around, trying to find someone. Anyone. There were no footsteps in the sand anymore. Only wind and the fading sound of crying. The person who left the baby was long gone. John bent down and gently touched the baby's cheek. It was ice cold, but still breathing. The baby didn't cry now. It just looked up at him. Blinking slowly for a long moment, John stood frozen. He didn't know what to do. "This is not my problem," he whispered to himself. "I'm not a hero, but still." He couldn't walk away. His hand moved without thinking. He picked up the basket and carried it inside. The door shut behind him with a heavy thud. Inside, he placed the basket on his small table. The baby looked around, eyes wide and calm. John brought a warm cloth, a heater, and a small bowl of water. He had no idea what this child needed. But he knew one thing: no living being deserved to die in the cold. As he worked, he thought about his past. A long time ago, John had a family. But war, politics, and betrayal had taken it all. Since then, he lived alone, fixing old machines. Staying out of trouble, no friends, no visitors, no attachments. And now, this baby, alien or not, it had no one, just like him. He looked again at the note. "Please, save her." Who wrote this? And why here? Why him? Then a new thought hit him like a punch. If someone saw this baby in his home, he could be arrested or worse. Humans and aliens weren't exactly living in peace, especially after the border. Wars, aliens were either deported or shot, and those who helped them marked as traitors. John stood up, nervous. Should he call someone? Hand the baby over? But he looked at the child again, so quiet, so innocent. A little hand reached up and touched his chest. The baby smiled. John's heart shook. "I'll keep you for now," he whispered. Just tonight, but deep down, he already knew. This was no one-night decision. He was already connected, and so was she, outside. The wind screamed louder, but far away, hiding behind a rock in the shadows. Someone was watching, eyes full of tears, body shaking from cold. The baby's mother. Broken, starving, but hoping she saw the man take her child in. And for the first time in her life, she believed in something she thought was lost. Hope, asterisk. She crouched low behind the rocks, her body trembling in the wind. Her arms were empty now, and her heart felt like a hollow shell. The alien mother had left her baby on the human's doorstep only minutes ago. She didn't want to, but she had no food, no shelter, no strength left if she had held the child any longer. She feared she'd die in the night, hand the baby with her. Now, she watched from the shadows, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The cold bit into her skin like sharp teeth, but she refused to leave. She had to know, would the human take the child in, or leave her to die? Then, the door opened. she held her breath. A tall human male stepped out, bearded, tired-looking, but strong. He spotted the basket, leaned over, and picked it up. He looked around, searching for someone, but didn't see her. She shrank further behind the rocks, pressing her claws into the dirt to stay hidden. Then, he carried the baby inside. The door closed, gone. Tears rolled down her silver cheeks. Tears of pain, fear, and something else. Something like relief. Her baby was warm now, safe, maybe. But what if he turned her in? What if he sold her too? The bounty men. She shook her head, pushing those thoughts away. No, she whispered to herself, her voice hoarse. He looked gentle. She wrapped her thin arms around her body and tried to keep still. Every part of her ached. Her skin was covered in old bruises and scars from the camps. She had escaped only 2 days ago. Carrying her baby in a broken cloth, she had stolen scraps, begged for water, hidden from soldiers. But her body could only last so long. She had crossed the canyon at night, walked through freezing winds, all to reach the human zone, because someone once told her humans sometimes helped. Not all of them were cruel, not like the others. Still, she had doubts. Humans had taken her people's land long ago. They had built colonies, machines, fences. They said aliens were dangerous, unpredictable, dirty, and yet, that human. He hadn't thrown the child away. He hadn't shouted or cursed. He had looked at her baby like she was a life worth saving. The alien mother tried to move closer to the shelter, but her legs gave out. She fell, her knees hitting stone. She clenched her teeth to stop from crying out. He heard her. It would all be over. She didn't want to scare him, didn't want to ruin the one chance her baby had. She crawled back behind the rock and pressed her head against it. Her breath came in short, weak gasps. The cold was winning. She thought of her daughter, how soft her skin had felt, how warm her little body had been even in the freezing wind. She thought of the sound she made when she fed, the tiny squeaks she gave while sleeping. Her name was Ziri, a name that meant light in her people's tongue. She whispered it now like a prayer. Ziri. Be strong. Inside the shelter, she could see a faint orange glow through a small window. The human was moving, feeding her maybe, or wrapping her in heat cloth. The baby would survive the night, but would she? The mother looked down at her arms. So thin, so weak, she hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her ribs showed under her skin. If she didn't move soon, she would die right here behind the rocks. And no one would ever know. She tried to stand again, failed again. A sharp pain ran through her side. Her vision blurred, her breathing slowed. But she didn't cry. She had cried too many times before. Now, she just waited. Waited to see if the human would come back out. Waited to see if he would bring the child back and throw her away. Waited for a sign, any sign. But the door stayed closed. The warm glow stayed on, and the child was still inside. Hope. That small, quiet, dangerous feeling, it crept back into her chest. She hadn't believed in it for years. But now, wrapped in silence and frost, hope returned. Maybe this human was different. Maybe he wouldn't hurt Ziri. Maybe, just maybe, he would protect her, raise her, love her. The mother let her head rest against the rock. Her eyes slowly shut. Her body couldn't fight anymore. But her mind whispered one final thought before sleep took her. If I don't wake, at least my baby will. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert. It brought no warmth, only light, and sometimes light was more dangerous than darkness. Inside his shelter, John was holding the alien baby carefully. She was sleeping now, wrapped in a soft towel. He had found her little face looked calm. Her breathing was steady. She was safe, for now. John hadn't slept all night. He just kept looking at her, wondering who she really was. Where did she come from? Why was she left at his door? Who was her mother? As he thought, a loud beep echoed through the shelter. John froze. It was the outer sensor. Someone was near. He put the baby down gently and rushed to the screen. 2 red dots were moving toward his location fast. He cursed under his breath. Colony Patrol. They scanned random homes for unauthorized alien presence. And he had a baby alien inside. John moved quickly. He grabbed the baby and opened a hidden compartment under the floor. Inside was an old smuggler's hide space. He placed her gently inside, wrapped her tight, and whispered, "Stay quiet, little one." Then he shut the hatch and stood up just as a knock pounded the door. Bang, bang, bang. Colony Patrol. Open up. John opened the door slowly, acting calm. 2 officers stood there in gray armor, holding scanners and rifles. One of them looked bored. The other alert. The alert one spoke first. "We're scanning for alien refugees," he said. "Routine check. You live alone." John nodded. "Yeah, just me." The officer stepped inside without asking. He looked around, eyes sharp, scanning everything. The other one followed, slowly checking corners. John tried to act normal. He asked, "You expecting alien traffic?" "Way out here." The board officer shrugged. "Some camps were broken last week. Few alien mothers escaped," the alert one added. "Some might leave their young behind to trick us." Then he turned and looked John dead in the eyes. "You seen anything strange last night?" John shook his head. "No, just wind and silence." The alert officer narrowed his eyes, then pulled out a device, a sound scanner. It could detect recent noise patterns. He walked near the floor hatch. John's heart pounded in his chest. If the baby made even one sound. The device clicked once. The officer stopped, looked down at the floor. He reached for his scanner. John quickly coughed, loud and rough. The officer looked up, annoyed. John smiled. "Sorry, dusty in here." The officer stared at him a second longer, then turned back to his partner. "Clear, let's move." Both men walked to the door. But just before leaving, the alert officer paused. He looked over his shoulder. "Just a warning," he said. "If you are hiding something, they'll find you, and they won't ask questions next time." John gave a slow nod. The door shut. They were gone. He didn't move, didn't speak. He waited 5 full minutes, then opened the floor hatch. The baby was still there, wide awake, looking up at him. She hadn't made a sound. John smiled, a deep, relieved breath leaving his chest. "You're one brave little star." He whispered. He held her close. She cooed softly, warm against his chest, but he knew now he couldn't stay here. The patrol would come again. Next time, they'd search deeper, maybe bring dogs or drones. He walked to the window, far out near the canyon rocks. He spotted movement, a flash of silver skin disappearing behind a boulder. He stared for a long moment, then whispered, "You're still out there, aren't you?" John didn't know why, but something inside him said. The mother never left. She was watching, waiting, hoping. Maybe too scared to return, maybe too weak. John made a choice. He put the baby in a sling over his chest, grabbed a canteen, a blanket, and a food pack, then stepped out of the shelter. The sun burned bright, wind howled again, and the desert was wide and unforgiving. But somewhere, out there, was a mother who gave up everything to save her child. And John couldn't leave her behind. Not now, not after what he'd seen, not after what she'd done. He walked into the rocks, following the footprints the patrol had missed, step by step, toward the one person who had no one left except him. The wind grew louder as John climbed the rocky path. He held the baby close to his chest, wrapped tight in the sling. Her small body was warm, but she had started to whimper again, hungry. Or maybe scared, John whispered. "She, little one. I'm trying to find her." He followed the tracks carefully. They were faint. Nearly gone, just a few smudges in the sand between sharp rocks. But something in his gut told him he was getting closer, behind a fallen ridge, half hidden under a crumbled rock wall. He saw a flash of silver. He stepped closer, slow and cautious. And then he saw her, the alien mother. She was lying still, curled up, her skin pale, lips dry. Her hands limp at her side. John's heart dropped. He ran to her and knelt beside her. Her eyes were half open, barely moving. She was breathing, but it was weak, so weak. Hey, you. Can you hear me? John asked, voice trembling. She blinked once, very slow. Then her cracked lips moved, whispering one word, Ziri. John looked down at the baby in his arms. She's safe, he said gently. She's here. The mother's eyes filled with tears that didn't fall. She was too dry for even that. John didn't ask questions, didn't wait. He pulled the blanket off his shoulder and wrapped her in it. Then he carefully lifted her up in his arms, one on her back, one holding the baby. She was so light, too light. It felt like lifting air and bones. I've got you, he said quietly. I'm taking you home, back at the shelter. John placed her gently on his bed. He set the baby beside her. The child let out a soft squeak, and the mother reached out, barely able to touch her. He moved quickly, heating water, crushing protein tabs into broth. He spooned small drops into her mouth. She coughed, choked a little, then swallowed, bit by bit. She took in the warmth. Her color returned, just slightly. Her chest rose and fell a little stronger. For hours, John stayed by her side, wiping her forehead, feeding her slowly. The baby had fallen asleep again, curled against her mother's side. It was a picture he would never forget. Outside, the wind howled louder. A storm was coming, but inside was quiet and warm. John sat back in the chair, watching the two. His eyes were heavy, his mind spinning. He had never wanted this. A child, a fugitive mother, danger from the patrol. He had lived alone for a reason, but now something had changed. He felt it in his chest. That tightness that had lived inside him for years, it had cracked, and in that crack, something new had grown. A reason to care, a reason to protect. He stood and walked to the window. The sand was blowing hard, covering the land. He knew the patrols would return soon, maybe even tonight. They would bring drones next time, and they would find everything. No lie would be enough. No hiding spot would last. He looked back at the mother and child. The baby let out a small sigh in her sleep. And the mother, still weak, clutched the child tighter. Even in sleep, John clenched his jaw. There was no more time. He turned and started packing. Old gear, food packs, water tanks, a heat generator. There was an old vehicle buried under the back of the shelter. He hadn't touched it in years. But tonight, it had to run. Half an hour later, he had the engine humming. Barely, he returned to the room and knelt beside the bed. The mother opened her eyes slowly. Why? Helping, she whispered, voice rough and unsure. John didn't smile, but his eyes softened. Because no one helped me either, he said. And I know what it feels like. She blinked. Her lips trembled. She whispered, we'll leave in morning. Don't want trouble. John shook his head. No, we're leaving tonight, he said firmly. They'll come back. They already suspect something. The mother closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Too much, she whispered. Too much risk. John reached out and gently took her hand. You and your daughter are not the risk, he said softly. You're the reason I finally feel alive again. She looked at him, confused, but in her tired eyes, tiny flicker of coes. A tiny flicker of coes. A tiny flicker of trust appeared, not full. Not yet, but the beginning of it. John stood. We move in 10 minutes. He said, no more waiting. Outside, The storm was getting worse, but inside, decision had been made, one that would change all of their lives forever. The old vehicle shook as it rolled through the cold desert night. Its wheels kicked up sand and dust, headlights barely cutting through the storm. John gripped the wheel tightly, trying to keep the vehicle straight. The alien mother sat beside him, still weak but awake now. Her baby was wrapped safely in her arms, sleeping. She had said nothing for a while, but she kept looking at John from time to time. A look mixed with fear, and something close to trust. John could feel the pressure in his chest growing. They weren't safe yet, not even close. He was taking them toward the edge of the colony zone. If they made it past the scanner gates, there was a hidden path into the old mining tunnels. No one patrolled there. It was their only chance. But back in the colony, someone else had already started the real danger. A man named Reed, John's neighbor, is the one who always watched from the shadows he had seen. The patrol arrived yesterday. He had noticed John acting nervous, and today he saw something else while fixing his drone tower. Reed spotted movement through a crack in John's window. He zoomed in with his scope, and there she was, a silver-skinned alien woman holding a baby. He gasped, eyes wide, then a slow smile crept across his face. "Got you," he whispered. For years, Reed had been jealous of John, how he lived alone, how he fixed machines better, how people trusted him. Now, finally, he had something on him. Reed snapped a picture, then uploaded it to the colony's security system with a short message, harboring illegal alien life, both adult and child. He sent it, leaned back, and smiled. Soon, John would be taken, his home searched, his record ruined. Reed would be rewarded, maybe even offered John's workshop. But Reed didn't know one thing. Someone inside the security office still respected John, a man named Langston, an old soldier who once fought beside him. When the report came in, Langston opened the file. He saw the image, the location, the alert message, and for a moment he froze. "John, what have you done?" he whispered, but deep inside he knew John wouldn't do something without a reason. Langston deleted the alert before it could go public, but he couldn't erase it from the system forever. It would be discovered by someone higher up in hours. Maybe less. He sent a private message to John. "They know. Run, now." Back in the vehicle, John's datapad blinked. He opened the message, one look, and his jaw clenched. "They found us," he said, his voice low. The alien mother looked up sharply, fear returning in her tired eyes. "What? Now?" she asked, barely able to speak. "We keep going," John replied, pressing the pedal harder. "But they'll be coming fast," minutes later. Reed arrived at John's shelter with 2 junior officers. He walked in proudly, already imagining the thanks he'd receive, but the home was empty. Dust floated in the air. Machines turned off. Only silence remained. "What is this?" one officer asked, confused. Reed frowned. "No, they were here. I swear." He ran to the floor hatch, opened it. Nothing. He checked every corner, but it was clear they were gone. One of the officers stepped outside and looked at the ground. "Tire tracks," he said, pointing. "Old vehicle. Just left." The other officer tapped his com, sending drone support. "He's running with them." Reed's face twisted. He hadn't expected this. He thought he'd catch them sitting in fear, not escaping like ghosts, but he wasn't done yet. "I want to." "Come," Reed said. "I want to be there when they're caught." The officers looked at him and shrugged. "Fine. Get in." Back on the desert road. The storm grew worse. John's vehicle started to shake, engine coughing. A light on the dashboard blinked red. "Engine. Heat too high," he muttered. "Come on. Stay alive a little longer." The baby began to cry softly. The mother tried to calm her, but she was shaking too much. John looked over and saw her face pale, sweating. "You need rest," he said. She nodded slowly. Holding her child close, John reached into the back and pulled out another blanket. He wrapped it around both of them and whispered, "We're almost there." Just hang on. In the sky behind them, red lights appeared, drones. John saw them in the mirror. 2, maybe 3. Flying low, fast. He cursed under his breath. "We've got company." The baby wailed louder. The storm roared. And the vehicle pushed deeper into the wastelands, but behind them, the hunters were closing in. The storm howled like a wild beast. The sky was dark. Filled with dust and frozen wind, John's old vehicle pushed through it like a wounded animal. Its engine coughed and rattled. The windshield cracked from the cold, but John didn't stop. He couldn't. The alien mother sat beside him, holding her child tightly. Her arms were shaking, her lips pale. The baby was crying softly, a weak, frightened sound. The desert was turning colder by the minute. Night had fully fallen, and the temperature dropped fast. In the distance behind them, red lights blinked. Drones. They were still chasing, still scanning, still hunting. John glanced at the map on his datapad. They were close now. Just a few more kilometers and they'd reach the edge of the old mining zone. Once inside those tunnels, the drones wouldn't follow. The signal would be too weak. And the patrol would never search that deep, not in winter, but reaching there. That was the problem. A loud bang shook the vehicle. Smoke burst from the front panel. The engine light flashed red. The vehicle rolled to a stop. Dead? No, no, no. Not now. John muttered, slamming the dashboard. He jumped out into the cold. Pulled the hood open. Steam rose from the engine. The coolant pipe had cracked. They were out of water, out of heat, and now out of movement. He looked up at the sky. The drones were coming closer. 2 of them now visible through the clouds. Scanning the land like glowing eyes, John ran back inside. They're close. "We have to move on foot," he said quickly. The mother nodded, too weak to speak. John lifted the baby and placed her gently inside the wrap over his chest. Then he leaned down and helped the mother out of the vehicle. Her legs barely held her. Up, she took one shaky step, then another, and fell. John caught her just before she hit the ground. No time. "I'll carry you," he said. Before she could argue, he swept her into his arms. He was holding both her in one arm. The baby against his chest. He didn't feel strong. But something inside him was a fire he hadn't felt in years. He walked. Step after heavy step through the snow-dusted sand, through biting wind that tried to knock him over. He walked toward the dark mountains ahead, where the old mining tunnels waited like open mouths. Behind them, the drones closed in. Their red beams began scanning the ground near the dead vehicle. John kept walking. Breathing hard, legs aching, the baby cried again. The mother whispered something in her native tongue, soft words to calm her. Her voice was like a melody. Even broken and weak, the child slowly stopped crying. But John didn't stop moving. The cold was sharper now. It cut into his jacket, into his bones. His boots crunched over frozen sand and rock. His muscles screamed, but he didn't stop. Finally, after what felt like hours, he saw a narrow crack in the rock. Barely wide enough for a man, it led into blackness, the start of the abandoned mines. He reached it and slipped inside. The temperature dropped more, but the wind was gone. He walked a little deeper until the entrance was out of sight. Then he gently set the mother down against the rock wall. She was barely conscious. "Stay with me," he whispered. He gave the baby to her. Then opened his pack and started the heat pod, a small cube that gave light and warmth. He placed it between them and watched the soft glow spread. The baby cooed softly. The mother opened her eyes slowly. Looking at John, "You saved us," she said, her voice dry. John sat beside them, too tired to speak. His hands were red from the cold. His breath came in clouds. "I didn't save you yet," he said finally. "They're still looking." The drones flew over the mountains above, but inside the mine, all was quiet, dark, safe, for now. John leaned back against the rock wall. His mind was spinning. He had no home now, no vehicle, no plan, but he had them, this alien woman and her baby. And somehow, that felt more important than anything else. She reached out, weakly. Her hand touched his arm. "You didn't have to." "But you did," she whispered. He looked at her. "You left your baby at a stranger's door," he said. "You didn't have to either, but you did." They sat in silence, in the warmth of the tiny heat pod, in the middle of a frozen nightmare. But for the first time, they were not alone. The mine was quiet, no wind, no sound. Just soft breathing and the faint hum of the heat pod. John sat with his back against the cold rock wall. His arms were wrapped around the alien mother and her child. He hadn't slept. He was listening. Always listening. Above them, somewhere outside, the drones circled. They hadn't found the entrance, not yet, but it was only a matter of time. The mother, Zari, stirred beside him. Her eyes slowly opened. She looked better now, not healed, but stronger. The baby, Ziri, was sleeping quietly in her arms. John smiled at the sight. But the worry didn't leave his face. "We can't stay here," he whispered. "If they find this tunnel, it's over." Zari looked up at him. "We have no place to go," she said. Softly, her voice was quiet, filled with sadness. "My people are gone. Your people hunt us." John looked away for a moment, thinking, then, from deep in his pack. He pulled out an old badge, dusty, cracked. Zari stared at it, confused. John explained. "I used to work for the Outer Rescue Corps," he said, "before I quit everything. But I still have one call left, emergency beacon, used." Only once, Zari blinked. "Who will answer?" "Maybe no one," he said, "but maybe. Maybe someone who still believes in what's right." John activated the beacon and placed it near the entrance of the tunnel. It glowed blue and sent out a silent pulse into space. Then he returned to them. "Now, we wait." Hours passed. The cold crept deeper. John knew the heat pod wouldn't last much longer then. A sound, not the wind, not the drones, something heavier. Footsteps, they were coming. John stood slowly, placed the baby into Zari's arms. He looked at her with steady eyes. "If they come in, run deeper into the tunnel." He said, "I'll hold them." Zari's eyes widened in fear. "You will be killed," she whispered. John gave a small smile. "I've already lived alone too long," he said. "This is the first time I've felt alive." He stepped toward the tunnel entrance, his old blaster in hand. He only had 5 shots left, but that was enough not to win, but to buy them time. Suddenly, a loud noise shook the air, but it wasn't from inside the tunnel. It came from above. Explosions. Then, silence. John froze. What happened? He ran toward the entrance, peeked outside. His mouth opened in shock, above the mountains. A large ship hovered, black and silver, sleek, with blue lights along the sides and flying beside it. Rebel fighters, old allies of the outer cores. People who still believed in peace between humans and aliens. They had received the signal. They had come. John ran back to Zari and lifted her up. "They're here. Help is here," he said with a laugh. Zari's eyes filled with tears. "You called them for us." "I called them for all of us," he said. They stepped out of the tunnel and were greeted by warm lights and strong arms. Rescuers rushed to them, wrapped them in heat blankets, gave Zari water. The medic checked the baby and smiled. "She's strong," the medic said. "She'll live." John finally sat down, his legs weak, his heart full. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Later, as the rescue ship prepared to take off, a rebel leader came to John. "You saved 2 innocent lives," she said. And risked your own. We could use people like you. John looked at Zari and Ziri. Now resting in warmth, he smiled. I think I already found what I was missing, he said. I'll go with you, but only if they come too. The leader nodded. They're family now. As the ship lifted off and flew into the stars, Zari sat beside John, holding his hand. The baby slept peacefully between them. The cold was far behind. The danger had passed, but something new had begun. A second chance, a new life. Not just for the alien mother and her child, but for the human who chose compassion over fear. And so, the man who once lived alone in silence became the protector of a family no one else wanted. In a galaxy filled with hate and division, one human made a different choice, and it changed everything forever.